Whether you support President Trump or not, we have to look at the big, beautiful bill because there are things in here that directly affect veterans' benefits, and one of those being the 90-10 rule. Now, the bill, for the most part, really supports active duty service members, which is great and all, and there are some really bad things like taking federal cuts to programs like SNAP. What I'm going to focus on is the 90-10 rule, and I'm going to tell you why that matters. So the 90-10 rule was established in the late 90s, okay, in the 1900s. But the post-9/11 GI Bill, or benefits like the post-9/11 GI Bill, were added in 2023. So we're talking very, very recently here. The 90-10 rule focuses on forcing higher education entities to have at least 10% of their profit, okay, their revenue, their income, however they make money, coming from sources that are not federally funded programs. So what this means is that a college or other education business, like a trade school, whatever, higher education, was capped federally, and it was solely dependent on how much money they could bring in that's not federal dollars, right? So if a college 10% is billions of dollars, then their 90% could be much, 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 much larger than a college 10% being a few thousand. Okay, so that 10% really does cap how much federal or how many federal dollars can go into that institution. And the reason this matters is because a ton of businesses and colleges were targeting veterans who have a benefit like the post-9/11 GI Bill, the Montgomery GI Bill, to enroll and graduate from their college. Now, this seems harmless. Okay, it seems like a great idea. Harmless, no big deal. Except anything that deals with federal dollars also comes with fraud and lots of it, which is why these benefits were added to the 90-10 rule. So long story short, and it's much more than this. This is just the synopsis. Fake colleges, and even some real colleges, and then other higher education entities, if you will, would sell absolutely baloney degrees and certificates and charge the veteran the maximum of their GI Bill, only to leave the veteran, right, taken advantage of with an empty promise of that degree or certificate, which in reality is worthless. All right. That's what the 90-10 rule is. Now, President Trump's big, beautiful bill essentially guts that. It takes away the 90-10 rule, which means predatory institutions will spring back up and target the GWAT audience after years and years of an endless, meaningless war, who now have that forever GI Bill. This is a big deal, okay? It's a very, very big deal. Now, we can go back and forth on the big, beautiful bill. We can go back and forth on the pluses and minuses to active duty service members. We can definitely go back and forth to making federal cuts to SNAP, not state cuts, just federal cuts. But I think objectively, the 90-10 rule, I think every veteran, if not the overwhelming vast majority, would say, hey, why are we taking this away? Like, what's the point of taking this away? Now, I can tell you this. Looking at the big, beautiful bill and the 90-10 rule, I have a few questions as to why this is being taken away. I want to know who's lobbying. You know, who's lobbying to even cut this rule in the first place? What does that rule have to do with the big, beautiful bill? That's two questions. Who is paying who? Kind of getting at the lobbying thing. And then how much are they paying? Because this is if this administration is putting veterans first, that's not how you do it, right? And that's just like, that's blatantly, I think even a hardcore Trump supporter would at least be like, hey, those are good questions. Why are we taking away the 90-10 rule? Those are my questions. I have no idea what the answer to that is. But what I do want to do is show you this article from SoftRep. I use SoftRep because it was I wanted to focus on active duty service members and veterans specifically. What better way to use or to, read Washington Post or New York Times or whoever, just read SoftRep. Now, there's a ton. I'm going to link this down below. I'm not going to read this whole thing. It goes into the big, beautiful bill and active duty service members and cuts to SNAP. all these things. Again, we're focusing on the 90-10 rule. All right. So on the education front, the bill takes a swing at the 90-10 rule, the regulation that prevents for-profit colleges from soaking up too much federal aid. If that rule gets repealed, you can bet your boots those shady diploma mills will be lining up to bleed dry every GI Bill dollar they can get their hands on. Both active troops and vets looking to get a real education after service could get stuck with worthless degrees and empty wallets. There we go. Okay. We'll skip all this stuff again that's going into, I mean, there's a lot more to the big, beautiful bill outside the 90-10 rule. That's just what I'm going to focus on, okay? Again, there's the repeal of the 90-10 rule. It affects both vets and active duty troops. Now, unless you've been neck deep in higher ed policy, and God bless you if you have, here's the short version. The 90-10 rule kept for-profit colleges from getting 100% of their revenue from federal aid. GI Bill money didn't count in that 90%, so these shady schools would go after veterans like heat-seeking missiles, promise the world, deliver a degree, and laugh all the way to the bank. That loophole got shut in 2023, finally giving veterans a bit of protection. Now, the big, beautiful bill wants to yank that safety net out from under us and toss it in the shredder. If this passes, those con artists will be back in business before the ink's dry. So, again, back to my questions, and I think these are valid questions. All right. Who's lobbying? Who wants to make these cuts in the first place? Who's paying who? And how much are they paying them? Because we're clearly not putting veterans first here. Those are just my thoughts. I definitely want your thoughts down below, okay? As always, let me know your thoughts. You can comment on the big, beautiful bill and Trump this and Trump that. That's totally fine. You can do that. I welcome that. But what I really want is your comment on the 90-10 rule. All right, this bill aims to cut the rule, which to me makes absolutely no sense unless you're one of the people who are raking in the millions of dollars of that sweet, sweet post-9/11 GI Bill. Now, I've used my post-9/11 GI Bill. I've used my Montgomery GI Bill. I've done everything except for VeteranAI. I'm a huge advocate of veteran education. All right. I finished my undergrad at University of Maryland Global Campus in cyber policy, which absolutely sucked. Right now, I'm in grad school for theology in youth and family ministry. So I'm a huge fan of education benefits. I think they're slept on way too much. And I'm also not a big fan of people taking advantage, giving veterans baloney degrees, baloney certificates for that sweet GI Bill money. Anyways, let me know your thoughts down below. And that's all I got. Thank you.